If you bought your Husqvarna Viking Amber Air S600 specifically because it had the Coverstitch feature, in this video I'm going to take you from the Serger overlock side, the videos we've been doing so far, and show you how you convert this Serger into a Coverstitch machine. So remember, this is two machines in one. So there's different things that need to be set up for Coverstitch, and I'm going to walk you through step by step what those items actually are. So the last thing I actually did was a 2-thread rolled edge. So wherever you are in the overlock side of this machine, it's almost as easy to go ahead and cut and remove all the threads from the machine and then set it up step by step. And then that way, this machine's so easy to thread anyway that you definitely won't miss a step. So first off, let's just do that. I currently have a needle thread and a lower looper in there, and I'm going to set this up for a Coverstitch wide option, so stitch number 24. So let's just go ahead and first pick out which threads we're actually going to be using. I see I'm using my outside needle with a yellow. I'm going to remove my middle needle, but if I was setting it up for the 3-needle cover stitch, we would be using 1, 2, and 3 needles here. So for right now, we're just going to use the outside one and the inside one. We do not use the lower looper, but we will be using what's considered the Coverstitch looper, and that's the purple, and that's going to be the one on the back side. Now remember, if you are short on threads, these two are needle stitching type stitches, so even if you had to totally match, you could wind a bobbin and put 2 bobbins sitting right here that would match the thread for the cover stitch on the back side. But because it's the back side, if it's not a perfect match, that's okay too. So here's the setup that we're going to be doing. Let's go ahead and go to where we see which items we need to actually be using. This first one is the most important step because we are going to be switching from having a guard in front of the knife area to actually fully removing the knife and making it not cut and replacing it with the Coverstitch stitch plate area here. And that's what they've labeled as B. And you'll notice it'll actually say B right here, and the one I take off will actually say A. I am also going to point out right now that you do need to move your stitch finger from normal to rolled hem. Now I was doing a rolled hem recently, so it's actually right there anyway, but you do actually pull that out. So it actually has a place to sit in location once this plate is in place. So let me show you how we switch these out next. Slide this open and all the way down. Next, you notice that there's a little kind of tab here right above where A is. Press down and this will slide out. Now before I take it all the way out, I want to show you one more thing. Not only are we going to be lining this up for placing the new one in there, but this little guy here has a home and he comes out this little hole. So when I'm sliding this all into place, I need to look in 2 places to get that to click in place and be perfectly positioned. So push down on the little tab and bring over the new piece. So here's the one that says B, and we're going to slide this in. You do have to lift this up a little bit further, but I'm lining up first the tab in front and that little guy that slips through that back opening. And when you hear it click in place, it is correctly in location. Now you'll see that things are in the way when we go to close it. So that is what I want to show you next. The knife needs to be lowered to the B position. So pull out this little silver part and swing that knife all the way down 180 degrees. And it clicks into place, so it has a home down here. Now don't forget to, when you go back to serging, to twist that back up into position so it starts to cut your fabric as you will have expected it to do so. But it does hide, so people do forget that part. But that's why this screen is so important. All you have to do is walk through these steps. Pressure is normal, that's over here, so that's what I have it on. Since the last thing I did was a 2-thread option, I need to make sure that this is up and out of the way, so I'm going to flip that back If you were doing a 3 or 4 thread, that would not have been engaged, so that would have been out here anyway, but that's a friendly reminder that it needs to go out of the way. And then the last thing is the upper looper itself is not to be moving above the foot like you've been used to. It actually needs to be lowered down. And to do so, turn your hand wheel so the needles come all the way into the down position, and that will allow you to move this lever from A to B. Now, if it doesn't want to move, you'll just need to adjust that a little bit further so it will move all the way over and lock itself down. Just keep turning the hand wheel until you're able to move that smoothly all the way over to the B location. Let's just turn the needles now, and you can see that that upper looper no longer goes up and down. It's locked below the area where the little table is going to come into position. So when you have it all correctly placed, it's nice and flush completely around the machine. Since we need to get to our screen that shows us where our needles go, let's just go ahead and go to step 2. In this stitch that we're doing for hems on stretch fabrics or for decorative effects on all kinds of fabrics. So let's touch X and let's look a little closely at what we need to set up next. The main thing now is we've been using needle positions A and B, which are back further in the presser foot. Now with Coverstitch, you are going to be using the needle positions C, D, and E. And whichever ones are highlighted are the ones you need to actually use, which is so helpful because when we go to chain stitch, I always forget which one I'm actually supposed to use. You can't just randomly pick one. So I'm always thankful for this on-screen help because then it's like, oh yeah, you use the one that's set up for chain stitch. So here you will see that these 3 little bubbles that have been in the front of your foot are locations of where those needles actually need to be. So we do need to remove the one that's in there now. So sometimes since I have to remove that, I'll just take it from where it is, loosening the B because that's what it was on, and then bringing it back up to the location of either C or E, you pick. So what I like to do is take my needle, drop it down one of those little bubbles first, make sure the flat side stays to the back, and then bring it straight up. Now you might not be able to get it all the way up first. Make sure that screw is loosened, and you can actually see it go all the way up to the top above that screw, and you know it's in the correct location when it can't go up any further. And you can actually see it at the top right here. Do the same for the E needle. Drop the needle straight down the little bubble, and then straight up into position. Again, loosen that screw so it can get all the way up to its highest location, and then tighten it into place. Now you will notice that these needles are not at the same location in height. And actually this one's so low that I might actually have to lower the presser foot down just to get the needle threader loose from the tip of the needle. But you'll see that that one is much lower than the one on the left side. Now all I need to do is thread the yellow thread through the left needle, the red or pink thread through my right needle, and then we're going to thread the cover stitch looper with the air threading system. Before you use the air threading system, go ahead and turn the tubes so they close. Give that handheld turn until you hear the click, and then we can go ahead and take our thread, slide it down the hole, give it enough to get started with an extra slack out the front, and go ahead and push that lever until it takes it all the way through. You'll see that the cover stitch looper is down next to where the needles are going in and out as we get ready to stitch. Slide that lever to open those air tubes and close the door, and we're just about ready to try out a cover stitch. For testing purposes, I'm going to just take 2 pieces of fabric, slide it underneath the presser foot, lower the foot down onto the fabric, and go ahead and stitch. Traditionally, with cover stitch, you don't run off the edge of the fabric. So there's a couple different ways that I want to show you how to get your fabric out from underneath the presser foot. So one is to take your hand wheel, turn it all the way down till the needles are at their lowest position, and then turn the hand wheel away from you, bringing that half a stitch backwards. I know it'll feel backwards. Lift up the presser foot, and that will allow you to pinch the threads where you are and pull them out securely. This is your cover stitch all ready to go. It looks great. Now, these last stitches right here, and that's why I pinched it when I pulled it out, these stitches can come out. So obviously you will want to make this to lock it into position is to pull that little loop back through itself so it doesn't keep undoing all the way down. But that's the beauty of a cover stitch. You can easily remove it if it's not perfect. Now I want to show you one other way to get to the end of your fabric and have it lock for you without doing that last step that I just showed you. But my favorite way to end a stitch looks like this. Lower the presser foot down, stitch your cover stitch, your chain stitch, whatever you are, go right to the end of your fabric, or if you're going around a tube, overlap a few stitches. Next, you need to bring the needles to their highest position. So finish the stitch that you're on, raise the presser foot. Now, you need a pair of scissors close by or something that you could even come underneath the foot. So I'm going to come under the foot and I'm swiping the needle threads to me, okay? So this is like a loop of thread of the two colors that are in my needle, and this thread I need to snip in half. So you can snip it off or put your scissors in there and snip that loop, and then when you pull the fabric out the back, now we've only snipped 2 threads, so you're still connected to the looper thread, clip it, and then flip it over, and it has already locked this in place. So you don't have to worry about like losing those last couple stitches like we did earlier. And it's actually all locked and positioned and looks fantastic. So let me do that one more time just so you can see. It is kind of one of those that they don't put this in your book. I learned it from somebody and I've been using it ever since. And I think it is brilliant. And whenever I show people this, they're amazed, especially those that have had cover stitch. So again, finish the stitch you're on, bring your needles to their highest position, lift up your presser foot, and then did you see how I just took my thumb to kind of get underneath the foot? You can use your tweezers, you can use something like this to kind of come under and swipe those needle threads out. You still need to snip them, so that's why I usually use the tips of my scissors. Snip that in half and then pull out the back and then clip that last thread, which is the looper one, and it is done. So I love that fact. This is beautiful. You've got so many options. You can do this decoratively if you want to use decorative thread in your cover stitch looper. You could put variegated thread in here. You can do so much along the way. If you're doing an actual hem, make sure you have pressed in your hem here, and then you can use the lines that are on this little stitch area to follow. And another little tip is that these little bumps on the front of the presser foot are your needles. So as you're following along and covering up this edge back here, you can actually guide it so it'll be caught in between the 2 needles, and that's what you're going for, is to cover up that raw edge on the back. If your fabric is knit, keep in mind that it doesn't technically unravel, so if you're close but not perfect, it's really not going to make any difference. I would recommend that you take a look at some of the Craftsy online courses. There's 2 of them that are exclusively for cover stitch uses and practicality. Now that you know how to set up your beautiful Husqvarna Viking Amber Air S600 for cover stitch, now those classes will help you know where to use those stitches on practical items, both practical and decorative.